Good morning. Thank you for showing up here today. It's a special day. We have a three-part today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about World War I and Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. We're going to have a play of the Unknown Soldier presented by the 48. Then our main speaker is Zach Goebel, who goes all the way from Nashville today. And that's partly why we have half the west side here today. He was a quarterback for Modern Day. My name's Browning. I was quarterback for Memorial. I was fifth string and he was first string. There is a guy named Jerry Browning and he was pretty good at Modern Day. And Coach Lobo saw me and he didn't think I was related. But I've put this quote up here. This is what's on the back of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And not on this one, but the real one in Arlington, Virginia. We've got a lot of things to show you here. We're in World War I day today. That's a couple of World War I uniforms. If you look, one of those is over here, and it was worn by a West Sider that was in bunkhouse of Poles. And we have Doughboy over there. What's that gentleman's name, Mike?
His name was Walter Schneider. He lived in Inglefield, Indiana.
Walter Schneider lived in Inglefield, Indiana, and that's his uniform from World War I. So that's a World War I uniform. You see that train over there, that was brought down by the Huntingburg 40 and 8. Mr. And Mrs. Steckler, they drove it down here this morning. That symbolizes a train. And a train in World War I was very important. Didn't have a lot of cars, but we had trains. And the trains would transport people or horses. They had 40 people or 8 horses. So it says 40 and 8. So this organization started about 1921. The 48 did the same as the American Legion, the same as the VFW that you're much more familiar with. And that train was the smaller train cars in the United States, and they would haul the people, 40 of them, up and down France to the front line, or they would handle 8 horses, and they didn't necessarily clean the car out between times. I know you're done with your lunch. So. The other things in this room that are World War I is that car back there is a World War I car, and that was General Blackjack Pershing. He got the name Blackjack because he took care of some African-American troops prior to World War I. They all called him Blackjack. But that's the original one. It's also from the west side. Postlethwaite redid it. Charles Postlethwaite's dad, $10,000. It's valued very highly, so don't scratch it. You can look at the Doughboy, and we remodeled the World War I room. But before we get to what we're going to talk about today, I wanted to tell you, this is in our World War I room. This is Mr. Gresham. And Gresham was the first warrior killed in World War I. And when he was killed, this is a piece of metal that was over his tombstone. It was actually over his grave in France. And that marked his grave and it would not disintegrate. So that happened in 1917. His tombstone is out at Locust Hill. We have another one here in our World War I room. But they took that, his body, and exhumed his body, brought over here. He had a burial here in 1921. And there was 20,000 people that attended the Coliseum. If an important person would die today, they would probably have 1,000 people. But 20,000 went to his wake. And this is his tombstone brought over here from Locust Hill Cemetery. That's his original tombstone. And he was the first warrior killed in World War I. The Gold Star, we have a lady named Sharon, I forget her last name, coming from Henderson, but she's the president of the Gold Star Mothers. You don't want to be a Gold Star mother. My grandmother was a Gold Star mother because my uncle died in World War II, and he got a Gold Star. The very first time they gave Gold Stars was World War I. So the very first Gold Star winner, if you want to call winner, was James Bethel Gresham, and he was honored here in Evansville. There's a debate where there are 3 in the same foxhole, and 3 could have got the first Gold Star. They continue that ritual until today. And a lady in 2 weeks is going to talk about that. She's a very good speaker, and so I'd like you to show up today. Now, I have to give you a preface because we've got a play, and then Zach's going to talk about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington and his experiences. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier has about 700 warriors that have been honor guards there. That's the lowest of any guard or any type of epitaph you can wear except for astronauts. So it's a rare phenomenon to have anybody at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. He's going to give us some insight about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Arlington, Virginia. But if you look at the statistics here, the first one, I'm just going to go over several wars so you know. The one on the far left is how many people were unknown in the Civil War. 300,000 out of 600,000. So many were lost in the Civil War and gave their lives to our country, and we don't even know who they were. That's about 50%. That's pretty high. World War I, we're only at 3%. But Europe was at a much higher percent. If you go and look at the percentages in Europe, France and England had about 10% unknown soldiers die. And so they did this whole ritual that we're talking about in 1920, a year before we did, on 11/11/2020. World War II, look how many unknown soldiers we have in World War II. That's close to 20%. You would not think that in modern times. Korea, as many, 20%. In Vietnam, it's in the range of 2.7%, a little lower. Just so you know, this is not a rare occurrence. When you add all those numbers up, there's 1.2 million soldiers that died for your country, 1.2 million. It gets to close to 400,000 there. That's 1/3 of we don't even know who they were. And so the ritual we have today, and when you go to the tomb, the Arlington Cemetery, it's very important that you realize that's why we have some of our freedoms. This is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the Civil War. There are 2,100 remains in that tombstone, and that's in Arlington Cemetery. But that's the beginning of the unknown soldier for us. This is a casket that's been brought from Europe. In the play today, we will talk about what happened in Europe. Is this, I said there are 4,000 unknown soldiers. We can't bring them all back. So what they did was there were 4 major cemeteries in France, and they took a body, exhumed one body, and brought it, put it in a casket or in a coffin, and had it in a large room with a lot of flags around it in France. And they tried to decide which body remains would be considered our Tomb of the Unknown Soldier from World War I. And so the ritual today, we will have a ritual where somebody will walk around the 4 coffins and place white roses on. And that is how that individual was selected. Then they came over on a ship, the USS Olympia, and it came into the Washington Navy Yard. And then they were carrying the casket there. In front of the casket was a guy named General Patton, but he wasn't a general then. In World War I, he was not a general, but he was one of the people in the procession. It went from there to the Rotunda. And I said Gresham had 20,000 people here. They had 90,000 people at the Rotunda viewing this person, the unknown soldier, and brought memories of people, of their own people that were lost in that war, and some of them as far back as the Civil War. The Civil War was our worst of all wars. Then they took this body from there over to Arlington and buried this and considered the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This is a picture over there, President Harding residing, and look at all the flowers and symbolism. This is an aerial view of that Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This is 11/11/21. This is another picture of it. They put a sarcophagus in 1931. This is, if you go and visit there, that's what it looks like. On the back of it, it has a quote that I said. Now, 1980, this is 1958. Eisenhower wanted to do this for troops from World War II. And so they went through actually the same ritual that I just talked about. 13 people were exhumed from Europe, and they did the same walk around the casket with the white roses, and then 9 from the Pacific. And they brought those 2 bodies back east, and then they decided which body would symbolize the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier of World War II. So if you look where the roses are, that person was picked. The one in the middle is one from Korean War. This was done in 1958 on 5/30/58, and this is an aerial view of that ceremony. Now in 1984, we buried another person from Vietnam. That person has since been exhumed because we found by DNA his remains. And this is one of the three tombs. It used to have the Vietnam person in there, now symbolized, it says on their MIAs, missing in action, and POWs from 1957 to 2000 or to 1975. That's what that third grave means that's lower on the ground. The bigger grave is World War I. These are some of what these people look like. And Zach will talk to us about these guys. Remember, only 700 of them about have ever gotten to be a guard. Their physique is a lot better than mine. And in the winter, this one guy that has on YouTube, he talks, he had to walk in the cold. The best thing he liked was warm weather stuff, and they started doing that. Zach will tell you from, I think, 1948 to now, they don't lose, they watch the tune the whole time. And that's what the honor guard symbol is. There's only close to 700. It's pretty rare to get that symbol. So I wanted to give you a little preface on that. Before we get our main speech, we're going to do a ritual. We did this last year. And the people over here, you might as well get your autographs from them because they're all going to Hollywood next week. They could go to probably New York City and become part of Broadway, but you better get your autographs now before the prices go up. So we're going to discontinue the slideshow, and we're going to have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. It's a ritual. We'll have some lights. And thank you for coming, and I think you'll enjoy it. So.
Lights down, please.
It is the purpose of the works of this ritual to give you certain instructions pertaining to the order, and to impress upon you with the serious side of lost society, which will extract from you service to your comrades, community, state, and nation. The 48 is comprised of those who honorably served in the armed forces during the wars and conflicts for the safety of the world, and who are today serving as citizens of the greatest nation on the face of the earth. So you see, in peace and in war we serve. Upon entering our midst, your reception is quite different from any fraternal order. For your interest here is with eyes open and not twisted. This is better to impress upon the friendship, devotion, and mutual helpfulness that exists among the members of law society.
My flag and I, two of us this vigil keep, midsummer rains and winter snow, month by month and year by year, as seasons come and seasons go. Remember, as you pass my grave, I am not dead. I cannot die. So long as you will keep the faith, we live, my flag and I. Pity, no. May envy me my place against the morning sky. So long as you will guard us well, we live, my flag and I.
What you're about to witness is for purposes of reminding you, never forget those who served, who gave their lives for our country, or the ideal for which their sacrifice was made. This unknown soldier represents the unknown soldiers of all wars.
You have to reflect on what France looked at that time. Looked on top of the tomb before we had poppies there. The poppies grew everywhere in France. If you listen to the poem, Flanders Field, very commonly recited at Memorial Day and recited, written by Dr. McCrae, Canada, 1917 when he saw his, or 1950 when he saw his compatriot die in World War I. I am the spirit.
Sergeant F. Younger, 59th Regiment, 50th Division, United States Army. I saw poppies in the wheat fields on the pleasant hills of France, reddening in the summer breeze that bid them nod and dance. Poppies in the wheat fields, now still beside them lie. Scattered forms that stir not when the star shells burst on high. Gently bending o'er them beneath the moon's soft glance. Poppies in the wheat fields on ransomed fields of France. Theirs was not to reason why. Theirs was but to do or die.
My comrades, in just a moment, the spirit of Sergeant Younger will continue with the story of the selection of the unknown soldier and the burial at Arlington. But at this very moment, thousands of miles from home, in grounds consecrated as American soil, sleep thousands of our comrades in arms. They sleep under the frosty skies of France and Germany, under the starry desert of Africa, under the inky canopies of the tropics. But despite the distances that separates them from us, they sleep there in the watchful love of every American, as surely as if they were eternally cradled in the soil of the motherland. For those heroes who did not return, let us dedicate this portion of this ritual as a memorial service to their memory.
I am Sergeant Younger in the city of Chalon-sur-Marne, France. 4 earth-stained coffins lay in a flag-decorated room. Imagine 4 coffins here. As I walk slowly past the honored roll, a bunch of white roses in my hand. The strains of the dirge played by a French infantry band floated through the door. Twice I made the tour of the room, overwhelmed by the enormity of my mission here. A shaft of sunlight penetrated the gloom, and it seemed that I walked with God. And he guided my trembling hand as I gently placed the roses on one of the 4 coffins. I had selected the body of the deceased comrade, a soldier known but to God. The coffin was placed in the casket. It was then loaded on Admiral Dewey's flagship, the Olympia, at Le Havre, France. A military band played. The casket then arrived in Washington and was transported to the Rotunda in the Capitol, where it lay in state on the same catafalque that the bodies of President Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley rested. The body lay in state as thousands passed in silent humming. Many wiped tears as they saw, in retrospect, the body of their loved ones. Flowers and wreaths were brought by individuals and organizations. Representatives of foreign countries brought tribute from their nation. It was 8:30 in the morning on 11/11/21, the 3rd anniversary of the signing of the armistice that ended the active fighting in World War I. When the body of the unknown was lifted from the resting place in the rotunda, he was then borne gently down the steps of the Capitol, waiting a caisson below. Military band played, Nearer, My God, to Thee. The President, President Harding, and two former presidents, generals of the Army, war veterans who had the valor to win the Medal of Honor. Cabinet members, senators, representatives, and governors were in the cortege. At the amphitheater in Arlington Cemetery, President Harding made a notable address which marked the deep emotions of the people. As the body was lowered into the tomb, taps was sounded and a battery began the national salute. This is my story, comrades. The 40 and 8. I have received my rewards everlasting. I dwell in the house, not made with hands, eternal in the heavens, with those comrades known, but to God.
The name of him whose body lies here took flight with his imperishable soul. We know not whence he came, but only that his death marked him with the everlasting glory of an American who died for his country. We do not know the imminence of his birth, but we do know the glory of his death. He died for his country, and a greater devotion has no man than this. He died unquestioning, uncomplaining, and with faith in his heart, and hope on his lips, that his country should triumph and its civilization survive.
I represent the spirit of the unknown soldiers, whose bodies shall reign forever unknown in the capital of my country. On each day, multitudes visit my resting place, and I pay homage at the shrine. To all I represent each comrade of all wars who made the supreme sacrifice for his country and for you. I speak with a commanding voice to the lawmakers of our great nation regarding their duty to the disabled, the sick, the orphan, the poor, and all comrades who have suffered war's cruel ravage. Would you, my comrades, who served and suffered with me in time of war, wish me to think back to the rest I so richly deserve? If so, then carry on the work that you so nobly did in war, and complete the peace time past that war has placed upon us. During my days of rest, I have seen our valiant veterans return from battle unhonored and shunned by those who failed to serve our country in its time of need. I have witnessed the division of the American people by the outspoken minority, advocating non-support for our armed forces. Later, I witnessed my beloved land misled, betrayed by sovereign work, influence, and encouraged by misguided Americans, scuttled a large part of its navy, and falsely its national defense on land, on sea, and in the air. Further seeking the good of the nation, further spreading the principles of true democracy, further endeavoring to preserve the prosperity of a free government. I plead with you to make the 48 programs your creed by day and your prayer by night. Be seeking Almighty God for strength and guidance to continue the fight for preparedness. For the ideas and principles upon which our civilization has been built, to see to it that our nation never again is left without weapons in a world where we, who would be free, must be strong, and to assure that the unknown forces of all wars, that their lives were not sacrificed in vain, and the nation shall not live hand against nation. Neither shall there be war anymore. Farewell until we reassemble
Please stand for our prayer. Unknown soldier, you whose memory we revere, I place upon your tomb this wreath to let you know that we who have returned will carry on and complete the peacetime task that war has placed upon us. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, Lord of hosts and Prince of Peace, extend your mercy, we pray, upon these, our departed comrades, who in their lifetime and in their death gave us the supreme example of how to live and how to die, in service to you, our God, and to the United States, our beloved America. We ask your blessings in all humility upon our comrades who have gone before and upon all society with him who said, greater love than this has no man, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Amen. Our debut, right hand salute, bugle, sound test. Thank you for letting us share the 48th ritual of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you would like to learn more about the 48 and the programs we support, please ask anyone in a red jacket. Thank you again.
We have the lights on, and we're going to get ready for Zach to talk. Our guest speakers are all the way up here from down south. Probably lots of traffic. He's a graduate of Modern Day High School. That's on the west side of town. And he then, I think he's a little stronger than me. He was, I think Special Forces, those guys usually got a lot of muscles. So if you want to fight somebody, you ought to fight me, don't fight him. I don't think I'm good meet up with him, whatever. But we're glad he's here. I can't thank him enough. He drove out of his place, got right back as soon as he leaves here tonight. So when we get our technical things working here, Zach, you can go ahead and say things, and I'm going to get this stuff.
Hi, everybody.
Did it work? Mark spoke pretty highly of me, especially in my modern day time. I do want to speak to that very quickly today. Even though I was first string, I'm sure Memorial this string would have beat me out, so it was more out of necessity than out of skill. And we did routinely beat Memorial during my time, which was more a discredit to Memorial than it was a credit to my dad. I am extremely impressed with what we just witnessed. Honestly, this is the first time I've been here. Is anybody else first time being here? I hope you share my excitement whenever you see a place like this in Evansville. It means a lot to me personally. And honestly, hearing taps again, I haven't heard it in a long time, and it can bring back some memories and make things. Honestly, I get a little emotional. But it is great to be all with you all today. Dr. Browning was not kidding whenever he said it would be a big crew. I'm very impressed, and the turnout's great. Very much appreciate your time, and hope you get something out of it. And even though I do know the familiar faces in this room were bribed by Mike Goebel with free lunch, I still do appreciate seeing you guys in the warm faces. I do want to say thank you, especially Mark, and every member and volunteer of this group. I've already said it, but I'm very impressed and very proud to have this place like this in Evansville. And unfortunately for you all, what Mark just broke down for you about the 2 million-old soldier is I learned a lot. I relearned a little bit, but I also learned a lot. So, I really think some of the better ways that I could provide some value is not necessarily with the details, not necessarily with the data, but kind of telling a personal experience and maybe telling some stories. And I'll certainly do my best on some understanding around Arlington, Old Guard, and 2 million-old soldier. My experience specifically was in the Old Guard as a platoon leader, both in the 1st Battalion of the 3rd Regiment and 4th Battalion of the 3rd Regiment. And if I could tell you what my primary goal for you here today, if you had one thing you'd leave with, well, let me ask a question. Who's been to Arlington? Wow. Does anyone here have loved ones buried at Arlington? So if you means a little bit something more special. But for those that have been to Arlington, you can go ahead and be informal and just yell it out. What you're there, how did it make you feel? Humble.
Reverend.
I'm sorry?
Reverend.
Reverend?
Appreciative.
Appreciative, gratitude, proud. I don't think there's another place like it on it. And for me, truly, I'm not short on words. I use a lot of the same words that you just said. It would be awe-inspiring, life-changing, truly. So my wife sometimes makes fun of me because I use life-changing quite a bit. Like I'll read a book and I'll say, hey, that's changed the trajectory of my life. Some of the information I'm going to use in practical ways. I'm a bit of a romantic in that way, but truly, I am very fortunate because whenever I was young, Pops and I went with a family friend, 14, his boy Chad. We went to D.C. And the entire time on that trip, we went. If anybody's been to D.C., you know there is so much to do in D.C. Like you can't get through all of it in a month. We were there for about a week, 4 days, 5 days. And we were going, because that's how cool he's wired, he planned everything. So we were going, and then we got to Arlington, and all I wanted to do was sit. I didn't want to go anywhere, I didn't want to see anything else. Man, I apologize. To be still and to contemplate the vast amounts of sacrifice that have taken place just so we could be in this great country. So, it was a very emotional, as you can tell, time for me, even as a young kid. And it still is. And it's hollow ground. There's not another place like it. So, and I bet for those of you who did go and saw a changing of the guard as a 2 million old soldier, you share the kind of sentiment that I do. There's not a moment that you feel probably more proud to be in there. So, just the precision, the dedication, the hours upon hours, weeks, months, literally years of these guys' lives they dedicate to perfection just to honor men and women that sacrifice. So if I left you with anything here today, I would just hope to share with you and maybe reinvigorate some of those feelings, because I truly think that is the purpose of what Arlington National Cemetery, the 2 million old soldiers and Old Guard. That's why we did what we did. That's why they do what they do. And I hope for those of you that haven't gone, you go. I hope that everyone takes some young ones, some children or grandchildren, and nowadays you gotta take away the phones and let them experience that. Because it truly could provide a unique perspective in this world that's kind of inundated with negativity, it seems. So, truly let them experience it. So, what I'm here to talk about today, I'm going to start with the Old Guard. So I joined the Old Guard in summer of 2016. I left the 101st and went to the Old Guard. And Old Guard is the 3rd Infantry Regiment. It is the oldest infantry regiment still in existence, still under regimental colors. The oldest active duty regiment in the U.S. Army. It's stationed at Fort Myer, Virginia, which is just east of the Potomac from D.C., so it's in Arlington, Virginia, and it borders the eastern side of Arlington National Cemetery. TOG, we call it TOG, the Old Guard, 3rd Infantry Regiment, all synonymous. TOG is broken down into 2 sister infantry battalions, 1st and 3rd Infantry Regiment, and 4th and 3rd Infantry Regiment. And top level discussion of that is basically the 1st Battalion, 1-3, basically provides services to Arlington National Cemetery primarily, and 4-3 does higher level ceremonies, wherever dignitaries come, and handles kind of a lot of what we call the dog and pony show, the important stuff, but not necessarily in the cemetery. So I was fortunate enough to serve in both battalions, so I got to see both sides of the coin. And if you'd like to hear more about that, I will be happy to answer questions towards the end. But I would like to run through, just to explain a little bit more about it. Just a picture. So this is a picture this was my very first ceremony. It's a Department of the Army retirement ceremony. And probably 6 years before it was taken, I would have been like, oh my God, that's the best picture in the world. And I look at it now, and I hate it. One, I've got little kids. I don't know, we just started these books where you open up and you find pictures and find what's wrong with the pictures or find, what pictures match. You guys look at it and you're like, man, that's a good picture. And I look at it and see everything that's wrong. But the biggest thing is I'm leading that formation, that platoon, through the chute at that moment. And if you look at our feet, My right foot is up, and everybody else's left foot is up. I am out of step. That picture was taken and printed and then posted all over my office, and I had some retraining to do. So, well, I did have one guy. You see one other guy. They're supposed to make me right, so I'm never wrong. But this is actually in the cemetery. Very few times do we actually get pictures in the cemetery. So these are especially important to me. And actually, the time that I was there, the time in the cemetery was the most fulfilling thing I could have ever done. That's just an escort platoon. To the left, you'll see the color guard. And to the right, you'll see, I was the OIC, the officer in charge of us, of that funeral. And then you'll see the casket team right behind me. And that is just before we were waiting on basically the arrival of the Here's a rock drill. The only reason why I have this is because the old guard is, we do very simple things, right? But we do them meticulously well. We do common things uncommonly well. This is a rock drill. So before every funeral, we do 4 funerals a day, 4 to 5 funerals a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And you rotate on and off a certain schedule. But towards the end of my time, I could do it all by myself in my sleep. And yet we still do the rock drill. Just talk through every moment. There's a lot of dedication that goes into what we do. So I'm very proud of that. This is just another ceremony. This is at Fort Myers. Here's one out in Summerfield, which is on Fort Myers. Here's an honor flight with the water. So I know we've had some honor flights, some people on honor flights here. That is one of the best things that I could have ever done, is to see the gentleman that always come up to the 2 unknown soldier, be able to tour them around is amazing. We also, this was the 4-3 side, this is the ceremony side, is whenever I was kind of doing some parades, so we did some fun parades, and here's kind of a tune. So this is actually a rehearsal, so this is not necessarily accurate, but we always rehearse at the very beginning. We'll probably start about 5:30 in order to get about an hour and a half in before we have to get out before it's open to the public. So we start in the dark and we finish basically as it gets light. And here's just a great picture. This is an armed forces arrival ceremony at the 2 unknown soldiers. So you'll see different, all 5 at the time. There's only 5, there were 6 branches, but all 5 branches represented. So, very briefly, Arlington National Cemetery. The first soldier that was buried there was in 1864. And he was buried during the Civil War, and it was soon after dedicated as a national cemetery. The cemetery was Robert E. Lee's personal estate. So they took away about 250 acres from Robert E. Lee and turned it into a Union cemetery, and it became the national cemetery it is. It currently sits with 76 sections and nearly 648 acres of land. There's nearly 400,000 veterans and eligible family members, so not everyone dies in action, not everyone dies a veteran. Family members are also in there, and there's actually 1 civilian. And the 3 most visited areas are the 2 unknown soldier, the Arlington House, which was Robert E. Lee's personal house, and is still in the condition. It has like the tools and everything that Robert E. Lee used, and the Eternal Flame at JFK site, all over it. There's over 400 Medal of Honor recipients, 2 presidents, Taft and JFK, about a dozen chief justices, and also some other unknowns. So the Civil War, I think Mark actually touched on that, didn't he? There's about 2,100, actually it's 2111, so 2,111 unknowns from the Civil War that were also buried in Arlington underneath 1 line, or represented in 1 line. And I've got a quick picture. This is from the estate. This is from Arlington's estate. So this is the Arlington house. So I show you this to depict, one, in the Army, we do a lot of what we call PT, physical training. I don't enjoy running as much, but at DC, you started on top of the hill, at Arlington, you started on top of the hill, you ran into DC. Is the most beautiful view you could ever have. Within 5 miles, you had Lincoln Memorial, you had Teddy Roosevelt Island, which was 5 miles, you had Jefferson, that was 7, the Washington Monument, which was 8, you had the Capitol, which was 10. So just some great times. And that's also my mother and my firstborn son. So he's one you can see. In Arlington, there's about 20 to 30 funerals a day. So there's a lot of people getting buried. And some of those are full honors, some of those are half honors, and some of those are just regular burials. And then we have the most sacred spot is without a doubt 2 million soldiers. And this is a picture of an armed forces wreath laying ceremony. We do this for high-level dignitaries that come in. Typically, it's a presidential. If it's a DOD equivalent, a Secretary of Defense equivalent or higher, they'll come over to the 2 million soldiers and they report that opportunity. Did quite a few of these. And as you can see, basically to the sarcophagus is the center, and to the left of that is the Army, to the right, Marines, to the left of the Army is the Navy, to the right of the Marines is the Air Force, and to the left of the Navy is the Coast Guard. And then you see the 3 tombs out front. So we have a sarcophagus, 3 tombs out front, or 3 crypts out front. And I kind of got a little bit ahead of myself, but I'm just going to backstep. So World War I soldier was buried in a sarcophagus, as Mark said, in 1921. And the 3 other soldiers representing the wars of Korea, World War II, and Vietnam were put in the crypts in front of that sarcophagus. Since the Vietnam body has been exhumed, and it was the Lieutenant Blassie, an airman in Vietnam, but he's been exhumed, but the crypt still represents. And because of technology and medical technology, basically, the likelihood of having an unknown soldier nowadays is very, very slim. So, but this ground is called, I liken it to the holiest of the holy. Truly, no one, if you see around the crypts, you'll see different pavers or bricks. No one's allowed to touch those. No one's allowed to walk on those. You're not allowed to touch the sarcophagus. Bodily injury from a sentinel, if you do. And other than the normal duties of guarding the tomb, many heads of state events actually take place here. There are many events open to the public, primarily reclaim events on special days like Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And there's also public events, so every time they do an honor flight, a member will come later. Anytime Boy Scouts come in, there's a lot of different groups, and you can sign up through Arlington just to lay a week with the children, so it's pretty incredible thing. So moving on to the actual sentinels, and just to tell you a little bit on the inside, and they're actually, it's funny because it's one platoon, so they don't give away specific numbers at any time because they consider it sensitive information, but you can project about less than 40 certainly. I would say less than 30 almost all the time. Probably more than 20 individuals in this one platoon, and their sole job, sole reason why they exist in the Army's eyes is to guard the 2-1 soldier, and do some special tours. So those sentinels make up one platoon of highly trained and exceptionally proficient soldiers and NCOs. There's 1 sergeant of guard. There's 3 relief commanders, which are the equivalent of a staff sergeant or E6. And then there's 6 to 9 sentinels per relief. And getting on that platoon is exceptionally difficult. Staying on it, maybe more difficult in my eyes. So, between relief rotations, private tours, uniform maintenance, additional testing and rehearsing, and then training other soldiers once you become proficient yourself, the average week for any soldier is about 100 hours. So there's some that are more, there's some that are less. But these guys, many wives, it's a single man thing. Many wives would rather the husbands be, spouses would rather their spouses be on deployment than be assigned to them because it's so demanding and it's constant. And there's something that I learned along the way. There's a very big difference between simple and complex and hard and easy. And what the guys do at an exceptional level is it's not very complex. It's pretty simple, but it is very hard. It's very meticulous. So in order to be in this regiment, basically soldiers pass a 4-week rotation, and then NCOs and officers pass a sword and saber, which can take anywhere from 9 weeks to a year, depending on your proficiency of things. And then for the sentinels themselves, basically, they will have an initiation day. So a new crop of volunteers, vast majority of them are volunteers or leadership, like a platoon leader would recommend one of their best guys or best guys that they think are capable. And they will get a new crop of volunteers or voluntoles to start a training. And that new class starts with an initiation day. It's in 3 phases. There's an initiation day, it takes about 24 hours of pretty stressful things, more mentally taxing than anything, but a set of interviews, a fitness test, a uniform test, knowledge testing, general army and old guard history, and then they're given, down in the tomb, they're actually given, it's almost a book, and it's like 27 pages of, font, it's probably 12, and they have to memorize everything. And so they're tested on that. That first day is not a go, no-go event, but it's more to get a benchmark, and unless you're extremely incompetent or unless you quit, you will make it on to the train-up phase, which is about 3 weeks. And then that just is basic orientation. These soldiers are all incorporated. They start to learn kind of the standard operating procedures of being a sentinel down platoon. Knowledge testing, marching, technical tests, and uniform. On all of those things, at the end of 3 weeks, basically, they're going to be tested out. And in order to test out, you can have 3 deficiencies, 3 major deficiencies, and 3 minor deficiencies. To put that into perspective, because that means nothing to you all, whenever I tested for my saber, so that's what we call the equivalent, I could actually go do some, conduct ceremonies. I was allowed 15 deficiencies, no differentiation between minor and major. So, quite literally, if one item's out of line, the deficiencies are very easy to add up. And that 3-week training period is a go, no-go, so that's actually the first time. That's a very high attrition rate. That's whenever they basically say, hey, you need to work on this and come back. You don't seem like you're going to fit the bill, or, hey, you passed your test. Once they pass that test, they are sit down to a relief, and that relief is basically a squad. Like a relief commander being a squad leader. SOP basically in place right now is they have 12 months to earn their badge, or within 12 months, then they will leave that platoon. So, a standard sentinel would earn that badge in about 9 months. So on average, someone that's competent and driven can be down there for 9 months and earn their badge. And after they earn their badge, once they pass their 4 tests that are required and have done enough walks, then they have a regimental command board that is the final approval. So it is highly likely that if you go to the 2-minute soldier and you see a sentinel out there, he may not be a badge wearer. He may not earn the badge yet. So the majority of their training, a lot of their training happens at night, but a lot of training happens throughout the day in the eyes of the public. So, like Mark was saying, there's only 700 badges, and about 10 of those are earned per year. So, I mean, truly, if you earn a badge, it's almost like a career maker for an enlistment. For a lower enlistment, you know that you're going to achieve a certain amount of rank. Only 2 other badges are more rare in the Army, the horseman badge, and that's just because there's only 1 platoon of horsemen, and the astronaut badge. So it's considered to be one of the highest attrition rates of all selection processes. I've been to a few places where they brag about attrition rates, so I won't get into comparisons, but it is certainly a difficult one. Drinking, tobacco, and cussing is strictly prohibited during your time down the platoon. Between you and me, soldiers are still soldiers, so. But with football, I mean, I think that you're not changing. I mean, that's a fun one. And the big thing about the badge is it can be revoked. There's very few things in the Army that can be revoked after your time of service, but the badge can be revoked if you do something that could cause defamation to the two-man soldier. So there's about 20 or 30 that have been through that revocation process. So, and here is a picture of, I'm going to wrap up on this and then take some questions. So this was, I needed to add this for myself because I am human and I have an ego, and with an ego sometimes comes an ego problem. And whenever I joined the old guard, I was very excited. Once I got out of the cemetery and moved over to 4-3 battalion, so whenever we moved over to the ceremony side, I wanted to do every high-level event. There's about 80 cameras there, there's picture taking. It's the most glamorous thing you can do in the Army. Like, I spent 6 years before that, and half that time I was in the woods, and like nobody cared about anything for me. I mean, it's just pretty miserable. So, like, hey, people actually like you, talk to you and stuff. But I was, it was hard to not get caught up in that. And we did a lot of missions with poets. As you can see, there's President Trump. There's our commanding general. And then to the left is, our Secretary of Defense, General Mattis, at the time. We did a lot of events with very high-level people. And there were lots of cameras and pictures everywhere. And now people see that picture, and like, that's an impressive picture. That's the one that Pop shows people. You know, it's not something that, it's just not the way that I see it anymore. I'm so grateful for that experience because once I did that, I realized how insignificant it truly is. And it's very cool. It's a great experience. But the thing that I'm most proud of was certainly my time in the cemetery. And this man, is Sergeant Carl. And he was buried on June 6th of 2019. And what I'm really proud of is 75 years after he stormed Normandy and truly prayed over dozens of dying brothers. And he shared that story with us a few times. He was able to do that and still talk about it. He was laid to rest in Arlington, and he passed away in early of 2019. I had just left. I left in December, and I was pretty upset about it, not being able to be there for him. But I was able to make some phone calls and schedule it on a day that may short its time. So, sorry. You guys are great. He is one of my heroes, and in the smallest way, I just wanted to honor him. So, that is one of my favorite things. And then, being an OIC of one of those funerals, you're handing a flag off to a family member. And there's nothing, I think, just the level of intimacy that that's to that is pretty remarkable. So, I very much appreciate your time. I very much apologize for starting this thing. I promise you, the captions played, and it really just got me. It was like, man, I've heard that in a long time. So, I am Mark. What are we doing on time now?
We'll open up to questions. We've got 2 or 3 microphones here. People can ask some questions. I'd like to ask the first question if I may. Carl Mann, we put him on tape here. Carl Mann was a D-Day.
Carl Mann was at D-Day. Carl Mann was at Battle of the Bulge. Carl Mann was an amazing individual. He talked to modern day students multiple times, and but he was a hero to many modern day students. But I interviewed him when he was probably 90, and he was World War II historian of the nth degree. When I went to study everything on all those battles, the D-Day and of Battle of Bulge, I went and read all his books. And then all of a sudden, I went and listened to the tape with Carl. I taped Carl. And all of a sudden, everything I said, I didn't have to read any book. I could just ask Carl. He was on top of everything. Not just a warrior. He was a West Side farmer and a salt of the earth. So he was a friend of mine that I can say I was a friend of yours, guys. Okay, we've got other questions here. Let's say your name and
Tom Barron, I'm an old West Sider, modern day boy. Back in the 60s.
You're in good company. You're in good company.
1 inch of the microphone, 1 inch, and right into it.
Okay. Is that better? Now, where do the Sentinels, where do they stay at? I've heard different stories that keeps you going,
So, directly underneath that sarcophagus is the 2 barracks, if you will, basically the quarters, and it's got the necessities to supply a relief for 24 hours. So in the kitchen, they have a little area that came out, uniform maintenance, everything. Other than that, outside of whenever they're on relief, they're living where normal soldiers live. So either in the barracks or Fort Myers is a very small barracks situation, so permitted to live in the population.
My name is Goebel. Is this thing on?
It sure is.
And obviously I did not play football, so I guess I'm not part of the group. But
You're still part of the group.
but my question is, I have 2-part question. Among the thousands and thousands of unknown soldiers, are there any women soldiers? And if so, is there any recognition of them?
Not that I know of. And due to timing and gender integration, the likelihood of I don't know. It's a very good question. There's no recognition that I know of, so And I'm pretty sure there is a women's memorial that is just outside of Arlington National Cemetery. And that's a beautiful memorial. But as far as unknowns, not that I know of.
Say your name.
Named Jim Miller. Back in the 60s, I had the distinction to be able to visit the grave of an unknown soldier, and I happened to be there at the time of the changing of the guard. And there's nothing any more impressive that I've ever seen in my life as watching the changing of the guard. My question is, there's a sequence and a count, isn't there? Then it referred to the 21.
Yes, and specifically, the sentinel walks on a path.
Right.
He walks on a path and he takes 21 steps,
Right.
and then he turns back around and takes 21 more steps. And he'll do that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that is the same, it signifies the 21 gun salute.
That's what I was thinking. I remember.
And the thing, and I wish, Jim, you just brought up a great point, because there's so many intricate, everything, literally everything, every detail is symbolic of some sort. And so whenever you watch a change of the guard, you will see, I mean, some of that is literally just inspection process, but there's a lot of intricate details that, like the 21 steps is widely known and highly symbolic, but there's a lot of those little details that go missed just because.
Is in some of the actions on a 21 count too, as far as
In some of that, you and I are in the same boat. I don't know. But I do know that, I mean, I should have dug deeper and called some of those guys that I know on that. But it's a great question, and the symbolism is interwoven everywhere.
anybody doing an honor guard, honor flight, I'm sure that they get you there at that time. The changing of guards is.
And the changing of guard, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that tomb is guarded by a soldier since 1937, 1937. And they change during the day only. They'll actually do, changing the guard happens in the wintertime, every hour on the hour, and in the summertime, every half hour on the half hour. So if you're in Arlington on any given day, you can see as many changes as you want.
It's a very emotional process too.
Yes, it is. And I've seen people react differently. Some people are just fascinated. I've seen people break down and cry because, I mean, the dedication to service, I think, is affects people in different ways. So. Microphone man is getting worked out.
Hi, my name is Rick Baldwin, and has the Sentinels ever had to stop the ceremony and challenge somebody because of disrespect or anything?
If you get on YouTube, you'll see some guys barking at people, and it's kind of refreshing. It was for us anyway. So yes, they uphold not only distance, but volume, certain, any sort of flamboyant's not the right word, but extravagant motions. It is very regimented on. They're checking the crowds at all times, and they will absolutely let you know if you're out of line.
I'm Barbara Cole. I'm part of the 48, also commander of Tri-State Women Veterans here in Evansville. There are 8 ladies on the Vietnam Wall. Most people don't know that. But I've also heard that they have women that are doing the gardening.
So right now, she may still be there, but there's a sergeant of the guard. So assistant sergeant of the guard. I think she just left. So the Sentinel is typically an E4 to E1, so a lower enlisted is what we consider for your non-military folk. And then a sergeant would start his duties as a relief commander or assistant relief commander and primarily run the operations of that relief and do the changing of the guards. So the Sentinels are primarily lower enlisted, while the NCOs, she was though, so I know that she was the assistant sergeant of the guard. So sergeant, she was the second in command down in the platoon. I think 94 was the first time that a female earned her badge. So there's a handful. At any given time, there's one or maybe two. It's very, I can tell you that the chain of command supports it 100%. It is very much, there is nothing but positive things with the integration. And the Army's really done a great job. Well, we'll get into politics, but the Army's typically about 10 years ahead of society with normalizing things. So, yeah.
My name's Dennis Holycross, and we were there about 4 years ago. And during the changing of the guard, there were some disrespectful people to our left. And the sentry actually walked out there and called him out on it. But the question is, if somebody was there and was going to attempt to deface the damage, the coffin at all, does the sentry actually have any live ammunition that they would use?
No, they don't. So here is a fun note that I will say. As much as those guys and gals practice, and as much as they care about and are committed to what they do, they're also human, they also make mistakes. So there are a few stories. We have mistakes in ceremonies ever so often. It's not very often if the 2-year-old soldier there is a mistake, but there is one. Those bayonets are sharpened. So our bayonets during our ceremonies are dull. They pick up bottle with them. But at the 2-year-old soldier, there was a knife that went through a sentinel's foot during the inspection process. So the sergeant of the guard actually dropped the rifle, and the sentinel took it on the chin. So he just walked on. So, but no live ammunition.
My name's Kevin Williams. Were you still on duty when George Bush passed away?
Why can't I ask that question? So I was the escort to the president, platoon leader. My role would have been to go pick up George H.W. Bush or Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter was on his last leg there for a long time. That's what we thought we were going to go and do. And then transport his body from place to place. And literally within 72 hours of me turning in my uniform, HW, we got a call. And my commander called me and said, "Hey, did you turn in your uniform?" I said, "Yes, sir. Very next week." Well, HW is in out yet. HW just passed away. Oh. Because that's what, I mean, truly, a lot of hours of training, that would have been a highlight. Yeah. Literally left 3 days before he passed.
Ask you a question about the cemetery and how immaculate it's kept in these national cemeteries for our soldiers in Europe and out the West. Do you have any knowledge base about that? And there's no guards at those places, but they keep them in immaculate condition. How do they do that?
It's really funny. So while we were in it's not funny, it's not comical funny, but it's odd because I don't know, but it is immaculate. It is immaculate. And serving with all my time in the cemetery, we marched primarily for the majority of our funerals through the entire cemetery. And you will see the remains. I mean, they have a system down that is, I mean, they will have a hole dug within 10 minutes of you getting there, but there's no dirt in it. And that hole was not dug 10 minutes whenever we did our pre-con. But we come back, and the hole's dug, and it's all taped off. I mean, it is, I don't know how they do it, but the groundskeeper, I mean, they have an army that just keeps those grounds. They put a lot of money, a lot of our taxpayer money into maintaining that, and someone to be proud of.
I want you to give him a big applause. To do this and appreciate all the time he spent. I appreciate his dad, mom, and everything they do for the city. Can't thank them enough. And Goebel's, I think if you want to get a vote, you should get them on your side because we've got so many of them. I don't know how many there are. They're all over that side. Few of them on each side. There's too many of them. Anyway, they are Catholics. Got